Hi, welcome back to APolitical. I'm Allan, the Associate Director of Political Strategy here at Assembly, joined by my co-host Tyler Goldberg, the Director of Political Strategy here at Assembly.
And our new table.
Every episode, we're going to just get a tiny little upgrade in here.
Set upgrades.
Yeah, I think it improves the experience.
I do too.
Yeah. It's been a pretty crazy week since the last time we touched in, which is sort of the norm for us these days. Tyler, what's been going on in your world?
I mean, it's really interesting because we always talk about these spending levels. We always talk about political advertising almost in a vacuum, and people think political advertising equates to Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump, and that's it. And so today we're going to talk a little bit more about what an independent expenditure group is. Mm-hmm. So basically there are two types of political advertisers. There are candidates, Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, your local Senate candidates, governor's candidates, all of that. And then there are independent expenditure groups. You may have heard the term super PACs, PACs, IEs, things like that. These are all forms of independent expenditure groups, and that's where you see the majority of the spending coming from in a lot of these races. So we have the party organizations, the Senate Majority PAC, Senate Leadership Fund, the ones that are closely aligned with the political parties themselves. But then, Allan, we've been seeing some other independent expenditures coming in with a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, every cycle, like you mentioned, you have the major groups associated with the Senate and the House committees that typically support their candidates in re-election bids or new election bids. But there's always special interest groups that get involved too. In this cycle, we've seen some pretty prominent groups come up with a lot of spending across House races and Senate races across the country. A lot of groups from the Israel lobby, like APAC, have been spending big in House primaries. And the crypto industry, who really sort of came onto the political expenditure scene in 2022, have really ratcheted up their operations this time around. We've already seen $45 million across races, across federal races from these associated groups. It's on both sides too.
That's the interesting thing.
It's the same special interest, but they have different IEs that support Democrats and support Republicans. And it's interesting too, because if you're just a regular TV viewer, you may not have even the slightest idea what we're talking about here. You would not really think you'd see any ads mentioning the mix of politics and cryptocurrency. And that's intentional. A lot of these groups, these IEs that we're talking about here, their interest that they are, the money that they're raising in support of their special interests, they're not what's being discussed in these advertisements. It's a lot of the national issues. It's talking about abortion. It's talking about immigration. You're not really hearing these groups speak of the bona fides of these political candidates and how it relates to their cause.
Well, and, that goes further into one of the themes you will be hearing over the next 13 weeks on the show is about the dangers of the lack of disclosure when it comes to digital political ads.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have one of these IEs that is putting out a message that is not related to their issue lobby, it's just an attack ad or a support ad, it's even harder then on digital ads to see who is responsible, who is funding these ads, where the money's coming from, and how much they've spent. So it all gets into this, cloud of obfuscation that is really, really hard to decipher, even for, dare I say, professionals like you and me.
We try our hardest.
We do. The other interesting thing, what you were saying, is how these groups are not talking about necessarily their issues. To me, another a fascinating part is with this reshuffling, this sort of economic populism, new technology that's going on, it is rarer to see groups exclusively aligned with one political party or not.
No question.
For a long time, you had big oil or the gun lobby, who were really known to be, on one side of the aisle.
Yeah.
And there are still groups like that. But as you said, I think we're going to start seeing more and more groups playing on both sides.
And look, there's plenty of corporations big banks, big oil, whoever you want to talk about here. They donate to candidates across the spectrum, even if they may publicly more align with one side versus the other. I think you're totally right. We're seeing a larger emphasis these days on finding who your allies are and playing to both sides, while all the while not really talking about what your specific interests are. And maybe some would say this is a little bit of a cynical view, but that's just kind of what we have seen so far. That's
Absolutely.
Just calling it how we're seeing it.
And that's the surprise. That's how you get from these races being $250 million races to $500 million races.
Well, that was my
in
next
states.
question. I mean, where
Yeah.
do you think this is going to, in terms of this cycle? How do you think this is all going to play out in terms of the raw dollars?
A lot of money going at a surprise.
Bold
Bold
pick.
prediction.
Yeah.
You heard it here first. A lot of money. I mean, we saw the last few days, Ohio has gone over $300 million in their Senate race.
I think the
first of
entire
the
cycle we're past $4 billion.
Yeah.
At this point.
And it is just going to be exponentially increasing
Yeah.
between now and election day. So I think that's going to happen. And these are the races we know about. As we know and as we'll talk about in coming weeks, there are things that will come on to the scene that we have no idea about yet.
Well, one thing we do know is that we are going to be here breaking it all down for you as it comes out.
Behind our new table.
Every
We're living
inch-
here for the next 13 weeks.
So we'll be bearded and grayed at that point. Until then, I'm Allan Strokey.
And I'm Tyler Goldberg. Thanks for tuning in to Apolitical.
Until next time.